New York just witnessed the most bizarre and horrifying sight on April the 10th. An entire helicopter tumbling down to earth like a rock. What on earth could have caused what should have been a tranquil tour of the Big Apple's most iconic sights into a literal nightmare? Well, let's take a look, shall we? Here's the story of the Escobar family's final flight straight into the Hudson River. This fatal trip was planned and paid for through New York Helicopter Tours, a company that offers aerial tours of the city since the year 1990. It's a very popular service for obvious reasons. I mean, who wouldn't want to take a sky tour of one of the most iconic cities on the planet? Unfortunately, the company has been rife with problems since 2005. Besides their financial troubles, they've also had 2 emergency landings due to faulty operational controls, and 4 separate crashes in the Hudson and East Rivers, resulting in 14 deaths. The fatal crashes were caused by a mix of mechanical failures, pilot error, and even a head-on collision with another sightseeing passenger plane. So obviously the company has had some seriously concerning issues that they should have taken care of long ago. But due to the company changing ownership and a little bit of bad luck, the world just didn't catch on that this was a disaster waiting to happen. This particular model that takes center stage today was a Bell 206 and is also another point of contention. See, the Bell is a very popular choice for news stations and sightseeing companies because it's super maneuverable, compact, and fast. But that sophisticated steering also requires a certain level of training and experience that not just everyone has. The pilot that day was Seankese Johnson, a 36-year-old Navy SEAL veteran. Johnson had previously worked as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot for wildfire suppression efforts and had a background in celebrity security and aerial firefighting. Johnson was certainly capable enough to fly the Bell, and it was already unlikely that a fault on his end caused the crash. That morning, he was scheduled to take a family of 5 on a tour of the city to see the Statue of Liberty, Wall Street, the Brooklyn Bridge, and the breathtaking view of Central Park, just to name a few. Agustín Escobar was CEO of rail infrastructure at Siemens Mobility, the train transportation arm of Germany-based technology company Siemens. The Spanish national was in the USA for business, and brought along with him his wife and 3 children for a little holiday, a perfect opportunity to celebrate his wife and one of their other children's birthdays that were coming up soon. Mercè Camprubí Montal was turning 40, and their middle child, little Mercedes, was turning just 10, both within the week following the crash. Also present were Victor, aged just 4 years old, as well as the oldest sibling, aged 11, whose name has not been released yet. They took off from the Wall Street heliport right on schedule. Winds were recorded at 21 miles per hour with good visibility overall, which wasn't exactly terrible weather, but those speeds were enough to exacerbate any other issues that they ran into. So that being said, bad weather is an unlikely suspect. The first 16 minutes of the flight went as expected, but then something went terribly wrong. Out of nowhere, the craft just plummeted. In a place like New York, with lots of tourists taking videos of their adventures, we were lucky to get at least 2 angles of the helicopter as it went down, sending the young family and their pilot straight into the depths of the Hudson. Apparently, there was no steering, no maneuvering present at all. That helicopter just suddenly lost all power and dropped out of the sky like a dumbbell. As dramatic as these clips are, many failed to notice one very telltale detail amongst the raining debris at first. The helicopter had quite literally disintegrated mid-air and was raining wreckage down into the river from above. The entire rotor was already detached from the helicopter before it even hit the water. For now, keep that detail in the back of your mind, because we're going to be circling back to it in just a sec. For now, there are 3 adults and 3 children trapped inside a capsule that struck the water at such a high velocity that it might as well have hit a brick wall. Emergency services and active police that were closest to the scene arrived in just minutes, and spectators were already gathered at the riverbanks, searching for any signs of life. 4 of the 9 passengers were pronounced dead at the scene, and the other 2 were rushed to the closest hospital. But sadly, they too were declared deceased upon arrival. The Belle and all of the souls on board her were ripped from this earth in less than 10 seconds. Now, all that was left to do was to search the river for all of the pieces of the shattered craft, with the hopes of rebuilding it to discover what could have possibly caused this absolutely terrible tragedy. The authorities are keeping their findings quite hush-hush for now, so we're left to decipher the cause based on the footage that we already have. So let's take a look at that close-up that shows us that the blades were detached from the craft before it even hit the water. The Bell 206, much like we mentioned earlier, is a tricky little unit to operate. See, its main defining feature is its super maneuverable rotor design, but it's also its most dangerous component. This has been proven quite clearly. Take, for example, the 2019 test flight crash in Arizona, when the pilot lost control and experienced total rotor loss, killing both occupants. This crash was caused by the pilot's loss of control. Another concern that's cropped up during training is mast bumping, a phenomenon where excessive cyclic control inputs can cause the rotor to strike the mast, leading to catastrophic failure or even complete detachment of the rotor blades. Now, Johnson was experienced enough to handle this extremely flexible and finicky rotor, but there is a contributing factor that might have caused him to oversteer. A large flock of birds was reported in the general area. Now, if Johnson came upon a flock of birds and swerved to avoid them, and the higher than usual wind speeds exacerbated his turn, well then yes, that rotor could have tilted too far, causing the blades to hit the body, and that strike would have been enough to rip it off of the aircraft completely, leading to a total loss of all control and movement. Then, gravity takes over, and the helicopter and everyone inside falls down like a weight. As of now, this is the best theory we've got based on what we've been given. Sure, it's possible that the aircraft might have been behind on maintenance, or some other issue that we haven't been made aware of, but those files are sealed, and they're going to remain that way until this investigation runs its course. It's also highly likely that the company, New York Helicopter Tours, will not still be operational by the time that the investigation wraps up. They now have the blood of 20 lives on their hands, not to mention piles and piles of lawsuits and rising debts that will most likely sink them under before the year's out. Unfortunately, that's too little too late. Someone should have seen the warning signs years ago. It was right in front of us for 20 years. Had the governing bodies stepped in when they should have, those kids would have been on their way to school, to piano lessons, getting hugs from their parents right now. But no. Instead, the once happy and thriving family is being transported back to Spain as we speak. As the company goes under, so do they. Now, at least they'll be buried on their home soil, surrounded by family and friends. That is a silver lining. It's with great sadness I say that that's not always the case for the victims in the cases we cover on this channel.